as it happens. Opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
Across the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, 642 individuals died fighting for Britain. Many more were wounded. We will never forget their bravery and their sacrifice.
Questions over Keir Starmer's past legal work on Iraq have escalated after a firm denial from Number 10. Downing Street insists the Prime Minister acted as an intervener and took no side. But new reporting today, including Sir Keir's writing in a book edited by the disgraced Phil Shiner, is shifting the focus from legal technicalities to the Prime Minister's judgment. Also tonight.
As a matter of conscience, I need my constituents to know I cannot support the proposed changes to PIP.
This is crazy, man. This is outrageous, man.
Ian Lavery is one of the nicest men in Parliament, it has to be said, even though he's very left-wing. Nonetheless, the Prime Minister has reportedly shelved plans to reform the welfare system until after the next general election, leading to claims Sir Keir Starmer fears another Labour backlash after rebels derailed disability benefit reforms last year. But with the benefits bill exceeding £160 billion, can we afford Labour's waste? Plus...
Straight from Brittany, madame. Feel the weight. There's more to an onion than meets the eye. There's more to an onion man than a...
Are we being too nice to the French over the migrant crisis? Britain has, on several occasions, punished people for smuggling migrants out of Britain to France. Should the government provide cloaks, berets and tres d'oignons to move illegal migrants back to France? And...
Do with the drunken sailor, what will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning singing?
Hooray, and up she rises. The drunken sailors are drunken no more. As Britain's cultural decline reaches the Royal Navy in the form of a booze ban, we also learn that banknotes are going woke, a bus driver's been sacked for confronting a robber, and a high-security prison can't make its windows secure because it's a prison. Is Britain a lost cause, or can we bring her back to her former glory? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most logistically prognosticating panel, the former MP and Solicitor General Robert Courts and the journalist and broadcaster Kai Wilshaw. As always, let me know what you think. Mailmog at gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the news bulletin with our preeminently polysyllabic news presenter, Sam Francis.
Yeah, right, Jacob. I tried it yesterday. That was more than enough. The headlines: Sir Keir Starmer says Britain is entering a new phase in its relationship with China as he makes the first visit by a UK Prime Minister in 8 years. During talks in Beijing, the President Xi Jinping, both sides agreed a series of measures aimed at boosting trade and travel. China will now allow British citizens to visit visa-free for up to 30 days, and import taxes on UK whiskey have been cut from 10 to 5%. 10%. Downing Street says the agreements are designed to help British firms to grow in one of the world's largest markets, while stressing that security concerns and human rights issues will continue to be raised. Well, the Prime Minister has said engagement, not isolation, is now essential when dealing with Beijing. Here's Sir Keir Starmer speaking earlier today.
It's vitally important that we're here today, because as two proud nations, G20 economies, and permanent members of the UN Security Council, it is in our common interest to find positive ways to work together.
But that visit has triggered a fierce political backlash here at home. Conservative MP Chris Philp among them. He says the Prime Minister is just clutching at straws and accused him of bending to Beijing's agenda.
People are losing their jobs, businesses on the high street are going bankrupt, and he is now in desperation going to Beijing, kowtowing to the Chinese, hoping for some economic crumbs of comfort to fix the mess he's created.
In other news tonight, nearly 100 children were harmed by a surgeon at Great Ormond Street Hospital, according to a damning internal review. The investigation found widespread unacceptable practice by limb reconstruction specialist Yasser Jabbar, who worked at the hospital between 2017 and 2022. Out of 789 children under his care, 94 were found to have come to harm. One family has said their 12-year-old son still suffers nightmares and will live with the consequences for the rest of his life. Jabbar is understood to be living overseas and no longer holds a licence to practice in the UK, with the Met Police saying it is now reviewing the findings to decide whether a criminal investigation is needed. A teenage killer who murdered a 12-year-old boy in Birmingham has been described by police as someone who enjoyed hurting people. The 15-year-old, who cannot be named for legal reasons, pleaded guilty to murdering Leo Ross, stabbing him as he walked home from school in Yardley Wood last January. Detectives say the teenager had attacked multiple vulnerable victims in the days leading up to that killing, including beating an elderly woman and throwing her into the river. After stabbing Leo, officers say the killer returned to the scene, watched the aftermath and even spoke to police. The murder weapon was later recovered, with DNA linking the teenager directly to the attack. Women hit by changes to the state pension age have reacted with anger and disbelief today after ministers again rejected calls for compensation. The government reviewed the case after new documents emerged, but has concluded no payouts will be made. Campaigners from Women Against State Pension Equality say 3.6 million women born in the 1950s were not properly informed about the rise in pension age, which left many facing unexpected financial hardship. They've accused ministers of showing utter contempt for those affected, but the government says a compensation scheme would not be practical. And driverless cars are set to hit London's streets later this year. Waymo, Google's self-driving car group, says it plans to launch a pilot service in April using robo-taxis, but with a safety driver still behind the wheel. The company says its vehicles could be fully driverless by the end of 2026, provided regulators give the green light. The government is expected to change the law in the second half of this year, paving the way for driverless taxis to operate in the capital. Those are the latest headlines for now. I will save a very special word for Jacob for next week. Right now, I've got none.
Welcome back to Save the Nation. The questions over the Prime Minister's approach to British veterans during his time as a senior barrister have escalated. Yesterday, when it was reported that Sir Keir had worked pro bono on a human rights case against British Iraq veterans, Number 10 responded by saying the Prime Minister did not represent the claimants in this case. He represented interveners, including the Law Society of England and Wales. The role of an intervener is to assist the court on points of law, not to advocate for either side. They also stressed that Sir Keir was not involved in the later European court rulings that expanded investigations into British troops. The Prime Minister was not involved in the subsequent case heard in the European Court of Human Rights. Sir Keir did not directly represent China's clients, but he did work on related cases and wrote publicly about the legal arguments. And today it's been revealed that in 2008, in a book on the Iraq War, which was edited by the much-disgraced Phil Shiner, Sir Keir wrote that the European Convention on Human Rights Law was far more effective than United Nations law. He said that the way international law had developed suggested, quote, a deliberate effort by the USA and the UK to change international law for their own ends. And he also wrote that multinational forces operating under UN authority were usually immune from legal processes, and argued that European human rights law was much better developed and far more effective in holding governments to account. Thus, he collaborated in a book by China that works to undermine the position of the British government. Today's revelations, following Number 10's firm denials, raise more questions than they answer. Number 10's statement focuses on technical distinctions, intervener versus claimant, rather than what Sakir may have been arguing for and what he appeared to believe at the time. Some senior human rights lawyers are saying that describing this role as neutral is misleading anyway. Interveners are invited to advance legal arguments and that they are not detached observers. So the issue is no longer whether Sakir was technically entitled to do this work. The issue is what it says about the Prime Minister's judgment and alignment, whether the Prime Minister's insistence of neutrality matches his words, actions and involvements. It is not the normal defence of lawyers, which is the cab rank defence, that lawyers must take any client, because that rule naturally and obviously does not apply to pro bono, that is to say, voluntary work. So by issuing an aggressive and categorical denial, Number 10 has shifted the focus. This is no longer about Sakir's historic work. It's about credibility, consistency, and whether the Prime Minister's account can be trusted, especially given his responsibility as Prime Minister for the well-being of the armed forces. The denials have raised more questions, not shut them down, and these questions will continue to come until the Prime Minister is more transparent. As always, let me know what you think, mailmog at gbnews.com, but I'm now joined by my panel, the former MP and Solicitor General Robert Courts and the journalist and broadcaster Kai Wilshaw. Robert, I want to come to you first to explain what an intervener is, because it's not a term I had heard before.
Yes. So an intervener is an advocate or a party represented by an advocate where there is a point of law at stake which it would be of public interest to be argued and then to be decided upon. So Downing Street is correct, technically, that the PM, as he now is, did not represent one of the parties in the case. But it is not true to say that he didn't represent a point of view. And that's where the questions now are for the Prime Minister.
And this was pro bono work. So if you're a pro bono intervener, you must have an axe to grind. It must be a view you believe in. You wouldn't do it to represent somebody else's view.
Indeed. And you're quite right to make the distinction about the cab rank rule, which doesn't apply when you're working pro bono. Nobody can require you to take a case for which you will not be paid. You will do it if you are interested in it. And so we can see that Keir Starmer, as with Lord Hermer, made a career out of doing this kind of work because they are interested in it and because they believe the principles that they were enunciating.
Kai, let me bring you in, because in 2007-2008 it was a Labour government that Sir Keir Starmer was effectively opposing. So he wasn't helping his own side at this point. He was just trying to undermine the armed forces.
Well, no. This was 20 years ago. And I don't think it'll be news to anyone. As a human rights lawyer, he had an interest in human rights, or indeed an interest in advancing human rights and international law. I don't think the force of any of the denials changes that fact. But also, just on this story, can we get away from this nonsense of, having to be tarnished by the same brush as anybody that you've been associated with, guilt by association? I mean, Jacob, I go on Matthew Goodwin's show every Friday. Plenty of controversial characters in politics and in law and in business. That shouldn't mean that 20 years ago, penning a chapter for somebody...
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right that people aren't guilty by association. But penning a chapter for somebody is usually something you do when you're quite friendly with them. You don't do it for complete strangers. And being an intervener in a case where Shiner was the solicitor, again, it indicates a closeness to somebody whose aim was to undermine the British armed forces. Keir Starmer is now meant to be in charge of them. And the thing that I think is really problematic for Downing Street is the strength of its denial.
Yeah.
If it had said, knowing what he then knew, he thought this was a reasonable thing to do, fair enough, you're quite right, a long time ago. But they put out an absolute denial. They try and shut the story down. And the denial isn't quite true. And I think that's a much bigger mistake than if they just owned up and said, it was a long time ago, and we now look at things differently.
I agree. I don't think the communications approach is the right one. They're being a bit fickle. But I think they can be forgiven for that. I think there are worse crimes in politics than being, at best, a little dishonest. I don't think this is the biggest challenge, or even amongst the biggest challenges that are facing this Labour government.
It's a pretty big challenge because it raises questions about the Prime Minister's judgment. His judgment as a younger man when he was trying to get human rights enforced outside the United Kingdom, and we had Tom Tugendhat on earlier saying that was never the intention, and pursuing human rights in a way that made actions by the British Armed Forces much more difficult.
Again, he was a human rights lawyer. Jacob, I don't think any viewers or any of the voters back home would be surprised in any way by these stories. I really do think it's clutching at straws. His role now, his actions as Prime Minister, I would say have distinguished him in what he's done on the world stage in defence. That is one of the only good things that, almost across the political spectrum, many people agree they have achieved in this term.
It was noble of him to be doing this because it brought law into conflict and made the world a safer place.
Well, it is the case that as a human rights lawyer, you would expect someone to undertake human rights. That's true. But don't forget, this was a pro bono case where he was paid for free. He took this particular point because it was one that he was interested in. But, of course, he isn't doing it simply because he woke up one morning and decided it was a good thing to argue. He will have been instructed by campaign groups or by others who wanted that point of law advanced. And it was one that he took the decision he was going to do. But we know that in any event that those were his views. You've spoken of the chapter in the book. There's also an article, as I understand it, he wrote in The Socialist Lawyer. We know that he said he didn't see any version of himself in which he wasn't seen as a human rights lawyer. So we're seeing someone who advocated for something that he believed in.
And this is a problem now, 20 years later, because he is de facto in charge of our armed forces. And might need to send them into action, but with their hands tied behind their back.
Well, it doesn't just go to his judgment, as you've suggested, although it absolutely does. It also goes to his credibility as someone who has to make decisions. And we are in a time of an extremely darkening international scene. It's, in my view, from a defence perspective, one of the most challenging since the 1930s. We need significant increases in defence spending. We are going to come on and talk about benefits later, and that's the principal reason why that isn't happening. So if you want the confidence of the armed forces, they need to know that their back is held by the Prime Minister.
And they won't think that, will they? They'll think that the Prime Minister doesn't actually want them to do their job.
No, come on, let's be honest here. This government has gone further than any previous government in committing to 3.5% by 2030.
Not quite any previous government, but never mind.
Fine. Much to the chagrin, however, of many of its backbenchers, which we'll come on to talk about in terms of cutting international aid as well. It's making some difficult decisions in aid of the very sector, the defence sector that we're talking about.
But it isn't. That's the problem.
And in aid of those people who've given their lives.
That's precisely the problem, because talk is cheap. It's actually finding the money. And whilst, yes, it is true they have said they back an increase in defence spending, those in the defence sector will be saying, where is that money? And in fact, when you compare the spreadsheets to the promises, you'll see the spreadsheets don't survive contact with reality, because the money hasn't come out of the Treasury.
All right, well, thank you very much to my panel, because we've got something very exciting coming up for you in a moment.
As a matter of conscience, I need my constituents to know I cannot support the proposed changes to PIP.
This is crazy, man. This is outrageous, man.
The Prime Minister has reportedly shelved plans to reform the welfare system, leading to claims Sir Keir Starmer faces another Labour backlash. With the benefits bill exceeding £160 billion, can we afford Labour's waste?
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, 2026 has already got off to a fascinating start in politics, but what might be next? With us now in the studio is impressionist Tony Lapidus. Well, Tony, very nice to have you here. Thank you.
Great to see you. We've introduced you as Tony, but I think you might also be Sir Keir Starmer for the moment. And Sir Keir, looking back on 2025, what's your most memorable occasion from the year and your proudest achievement?
Well, look, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it. It means so much to me. There have been so many achievements. Namely, one of the most important ones was when Donald Trump invited me up in the Sharm el-Sheikh summit and then told me to retreat like a little boy to the corner. It was a projection of such leadership. And the British people voted for a strong leader, and I think I conveyed that.
Accusations made against you about what you were like in your school days at Dulwich. How have you responded to those accusations?
Oh, well, they're not true. They're not true at all. Isn't it funny that people would bring something up from so many decades ago? At the end of the day, what I did when I was younger, I deny it all, by the way, but what I did, I never said anything nastily. I remember one chap, and he wrote me an email recently. He said, "You used to call me overweight." And I did, but I did it to do him a favour. And you know what? He said in the end, he couldn't get a job because he lost so much weight and this stuck him in a mental asylum.
Oh, well, first of all, that's a stupid question, isn't it? You're a stupid guy, aren't you? You know, you're beautiful, by the way. You're a beautiful guy. You're a beautiful woman, excuse me. But I will say that's a stupid, dumb question because it's been one of the most unbelievable... probably the best year that anybody's ever seen, even though we're in January. You know that. You know she knows that. She loves this. She absolutely loves it. But, yeah, it's going to be so much better, and we're going to do a lot more invasion.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America. They're shaping Britain, too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and the mail mogs have come steaming in. Trevor says the ECHR is a complete farce. It's being used by money-grabbing lawyers to work around British law to benefit criminals. Use it properly or come out of it. British law should rule over everything else in this country. And Richard has sent in a mail mog which has a word in it that I did not know and had to get my brilliant producer to tell me what it meant. He says we now have critocracy ruling us. Critocracy means rule by judges. So, Richard, thank you. I should now be dropping this into conversation every opportunity. And I don't remember that being offered on any party's manifesto. But Elizabeth says, Kai is surely forgetting that Nigel Farage has recently been accused of behaving badly when he was at school around 50 years ago. So thank you for the mail mogs. Keep on sending them in. The Prime Minister has reportedly shelved plans, and that sounds like another U-turn, for an overhaul of the welfare system, making reforms unlikely before the next general election. Downing Street has blocked the Department for Work and Pensions from introducing new benefits legislation until at least next year, leading to accusations that the Prime Minister is running scared of another backlash from Labour MPs. In June 2025, 108 Labour rebels stopped plans to reform personal independence payments for disabled people.
It is with a heavy, broken heart that I will be voting against this bill today. As a matter of conscience, I need my constituents to know I cannot support the proposed changes to PIP.
This is outrageous, man. This bill isn't fit for purpose. I can ask a right honourable gentleman to rip the ones out now. That's changed. There would only be 2 pages left. Withdraw the bill.
Well, you can tell that Ian Lavery was cross because he referred to his ministerial colleague as right honourable gentleman when he is, of course, a right honourable friend. When you get really, really annoyed with your own front bench, you can use subtle parliamentary techniques to indicate your fury. Mind you, Ian can do it quite bluntly as well. But can Britain afford to delay welfare reform when the benefits bill is a passing £160 billion? So my panel's with me, and Kai, I'm going to give you the chance to go first on this. Bill next year. That means nothing will happen before 2029. Labour's running away from welfare reform.
I'd agree with you on this, actually. You know, young people in particular, we're seeing enrolling onto welfare in record numbers. It's a real challenge, and I don't think Labour has the answer. In particular, Keir Starmer doesn't have the answer. because he's an exceptionally weak Prime Minister at this moment. Now, I think many of the problems of this government, and with Keir Starmer in particular, come down to presentation style and not building a narrative. That may not matter with voters, but it certainly matters when you're trying to convince your own MPs of something. And I think that's where he failed with the welfare argument the first time. It may be that he or somebody else can prosecute the argument in the next time.
Because good leaders have to persuade their MPs to do things that are immediately difficult, but are in the longer term beneficial. And I think what you're saying about young people and benefits is so true, that you condemn young people to a life of failure if you don't help them get into work as soon as they've left school, really, or university, and that making benefits too easy isn't good for 20-year-olds. It's very bad for them.
Yeah, and I think many MPs who I've talked to, Labour MPs, do see this as an existential threat. Because it's huge. If you have a lost generation of young people who have never worked in their lives, it only spirals from there when you don't have the ethic and haven't learned from your mentors, your peers. It only gets worse. And so I think they're cottoning on to this. But again, it's about crafting an argument and a narrative as to why you make that trade-off as an MP and not another one.
And Robert, Ian Duncan Smith did this extremely well and made fundamental changes. Those completely ran out of steam by the end of the Tories' period in government, and welfare was already getting out of control. This is really the continuation of what we left them. We can't just blame Labour, can we?
Well, certainly there is a direction of travel put in place, but it's about having the awareness of it and then the need to tackle it. There's no way that Ian Duncan Smith or anyone else in that Conservative government could look 20 years ahead and see where things would end up. We all now know this, as do they. And I think Kai's right to say this is a comms failure, but it's also a failure of substance too, because this is a government, I would say, its big failure is it doesn't really know what it's for. And when you're elected on the back of this loveless landslide in which you have a huge majority but without a defining mission because you've been elected because you aren't the other lot, then it's very difficult to say to your MPs, you need to do this because it's the thing that you were elected to do. So the absence of a driving mission means it's very difficult to get that comm strategy right, and I think that's why we see this very weak Prime Minister.
Well, isn't there also an electoral consequence of it, that a lot of people on benefits are more likely to vote Labour than Conservative, and therefore you're protecting your own? And if you look then at us, don't we do the same for pensioners?
So that's why we have to look very hard at what we do, because a political party that exists on the back of a narrow electorate that simply votes will not be one that acts in the best interest of the country, which is what we have to be doing. So that's why the Conservative Party, of course, is doing a large policy review to ensure that the offer is broad and does all of those things that we know needs to be done for the good of the country. That is things like removing unnecessary regulation, lowering the taxation burden, being more pro-business, and, of course, tackling welfare.
And what's interesting in this conversation is both of you can set out the problems very easily.
Yes.
But we have a government that is in a period of drift, and it's only been in office for 18 months. Nothing is going to happen between now and 2029, is it? The way things work, the time it takes to introduce legislation, if you've no idea what you're going to do yet, nothing is going to happen.
I think one of the other, in addition to communications, which we've talked about, what would have provided maybe that mission and that vision would be an understanding of all these problems much earlier on. We were told that this work preparing for government was happening. It clearly didn't happen.
Well, I'm very pleased because we've now got the connection with the former Pensions Minister, Baroness Altman. Baroness Altman, thank you so much for joining me this evening. We desperately need welfare reform, don't we, to give young people a chance rather than throwing them on the scrap heap?
Absolutely. Obviously, it needs to be done sensitively, and there are lots of ways in which the reforms could go wrong. But I think the responsibility is on the government to actually find sensible ways in which to support people while also helping them into work rather than paying them not to work, which is where we are at the moment.
And how would you do it if, Keir Starmer rang you up on the plane back from Peking and said, please advise me, what should I do with welfare reform? What would you be telling him to do?
Well, I think he needs to face down some of his backbenchers who will never agree to any welfare reforms. And I certainly think that the current system whereby people are signed off and never checked anymore needs to change. There has to be some kind of check and balance. People's health changes. They may be unfit or unable to work today. That doesn't mean it's forever, even if they have some very serious illness that they can recover from. Or, you know, the work tests really do need to focus on what people can do rather than what they can't do. And that's been a function of the system for a long time, actually.
Which was, I think, one of the successes of Ian Duncan Smith's report, to try and think what people could do.
Correct.
The thing about the retesting, as a constituency MP, when retesting came in, the problem is you get lots of people who are being retested who have a few months to live. And you need to have a sophisticated system, because otherwise you're creating a misery for a small number of people. But big governmental systems tend to lack nuance. So how do you think you could overcome that problem?
Well, I think there are some areas where you really can't be sure that you are going to miss the person who needs to be missed. And the best thing in those circumstances is if somebody has got very little time left to live, once we get some kind of joined up system of information sharing, the NHS should be sharing that with the benefits department so those people are not recalled for testing. At the moment, there isn't enough liaison between departments. The IT doesn't work in the way it would do in, let's say, a private sector business. That is a long-term issue. No government has really properly cracked it yet. I think there have been attempts. But the issue for me also revolves around the involvement of GPs, because if you are relying on a GP to fill in a form as to whether somebody can or can't work, it's almost inevitable that the patient who has perhaps some relationship with the GP, or the GP might hope that they will keep a relationship in future, could so easily persuade the GP to just sign them off. And it's much easier for overworked GPs to do so.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure to talk to you. What have we got coming up next in a moment? Very exciting.
Straight from Brittany, madame. Feel the weight. There's more to an onion than meets the eye. There's more to an onion man than a beret.
Oh, ooh la la. Are we being too nice to the French over the migrant crisis? Britain has on several occasions punished people for smuggling migrants out of Britain to France. Should the government provide cloaks, berets and tres d'oignons to move illegal migrants to France? Thank you very much.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Sunny spells on Friday for Ibiza and Mallorca. A few showers in southern parts of Italy. For northern Spain and northern Portugal, more wet and windy weather swinging in here, also bringing some heavy downpours through into western parts of France. The south of France, Catalonia, seeing sunny spells on Friday, but it will turn wetter here. Showers in southern Italy and a mixture of sunny spells and showers for the Greek islands as well. That wet weather working its way across northern Spain into Barcelona for Sunday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Yet more unsettled weather to come. Lots of rain around during the next 24 hours. Snow for some northern areas, all of it accompanied by gusty winds. Low pressure well and truly in charge of the UK's weather at the moment. A south-shifted storm track means these lows are moving in from the southwest, relentlessly bringing more bands of rain in to much of south and southwestern UK. And those bands of rain moving northeastwards, bumping into colder air in the northeast. So could be issues at first overnight across Northern Ireland, the southwest, following yet more wet weather. But then, by the end of the night, there'll be some snow falling across parts of northern England, southern Scotland. most likely above 100, 200 metres and not really settling until you get to 300 metres. But there'll be some wintry weather around first thing. The Grampians continuing to see persistent rain and hill snow, likewise accompanied by strong southeasterly winds. Northwest Scotland, once again the place to be, plenty of sunshine to start things off here. The more persistent rain clearing Northern Ireland, clearing the Midlands, and showers following. Brighter skies at first for the southwest, albeit with some showers, before the next system piles in by the afternoon, bringing once again persistent and at times heavy rain as well as gusty winds. None of these systems amounting to as much rain as we saw earlier in the week due to Storm Chandra, but not welcome anyway because of the saturated nature of the ground. And the rain in the northeast tending to persist, although the snow mostly confined to the tops of the Pennines and southern uplands by the afternoon. Saturday isn't looking quite as wet and windy. We do still have lots of showers rotating around a decaying area of low pressure in the south. They ease later in the day. Plenty of cloud cover. The driest weather towards the northwest and even some sunshine coming through. Feeling cold nevertheless. Sunday still a lot of cloud around before it turns unsettled again later Monday.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, the mailmogs have been coming in. Mike is channeling his inner Samuel Johnson and says only a fool would work for the same or less money than they would get on benefits. Dr. Johnson said only a blockhead would write except for money. He goes on to say, blame the politicians who are responsible for the perverse incentives, not the claimants, who are behaving in a predictable, economically rational manner. You're absolutely right, Mike. It's quite true. And David said benefits should be brought in line with minimum wage. If you're saying that's enough for working people to live on, it should be enough for those on benefits. So we now have the question of whether we're being too nice to the French over the migrant crisis. While ministers talk tough about stopping boats coming into Britain, the UK has repeatedly prosecuted people for smuggling migrants out of the country and into France.
They call themselves Onion Johnnies. And, if you will permit the remark, they are not Englishmen dressed up as Frenchmen either. They are as French as I am. These are
Onion Johnnies. Well, if illegal migrants are so keen to go to France, shouldn't we send them on their way with cloaks, berets and nice tres d'oignon? Well, I'm joined now by my panel, Robert Courts and Kai Wilshire. Robert, if people want to leave this country, surely we should be saying, off you go, have a nice trip, you know, the British Airways thing. We hope you enjoy flying with us today.
Yeah. Well, I think many people watching this programme, Jacob, would have a great deal of sympathy with that. If people wish to leave, then they ought to be allowed to do so, in fact, encouraged to do so. We have a massive problem with illegal migration across the whole of the West, and it is absolutely necessary to have proper, tough steps taken. We're not seeing anything done by this government that is anything more than performative, that will make any difference whatsoever. We do need to take much tougher steps than we have seen so far.
And we give the French lots of money in the hope that they will stop the boats. But they don't. They keep on coming. 50,000 last year. The one-in, one-out system has meant that we've taken more people in than we've sent back. It's a crazy system. And the people who go out try and come back on the next boat. So why don't we just say to people, here's your ticket to France, why don't you go on the Eurostar?
Well, this is it. And of course, for the French, it's politically difficult for them to take too much action because from a northern French perspective, they won't want people staying there. They'll want them to move through. So they have their own political pressures. But what we do need to do is to make absolutely clear to them that this problem of illegal migration is one of the great seismic issues of our age for the whole of the West, not just for us.
And isn't it a terrible waste of the police time to be trying to catch people being smuggled out of the country? We want them smuggled out of the country. We just want them out.
No. I think yes, on the face of it, it seems odd, doesn't it? We want people to leave, they're leaving, great. But the root cause of people using illegal routes to migrate here or from here into France is the smuggling gangs. And by tackling the smuggling gangs or by trying to go to the root of that source, you're tackling the same problem, right? Now, also, any deal with France has to be based on some level of trust, doesn't it? It has to be based on the fact that, yes, if there are people trying to migrate illegally into France, yes, that may mean that we then stop them and keep them in the UK. But that has to be the way if we're to expect a reciprocal deal for them to be sending people.
When has it ever been sensible to trust the French? I mean, we have sometimes been their allies, we've sometimes, but over 1,000 years, you've never done well by trusting
But on
the French.
these issues, I really don't think it helps anyone, does it, to try and to play fickle with matters of border security.
Well, I also...
but also this one-in, one-out pilot scheme. Yes, Shabana Mahmoud has said herself it's had teething problems, right? And the numbers will fluctuate. And Keir Starmer said that himself.
Mine
but it's a pilot scheme.
Fluctuate means they go up and down. These ones just go up.
But it's one of many different interventions Shabana Mahmoud is doing. And since when has she been in post? September.
I think Shabana Mahmood is trying to do the right things. I don't think she should be able to because of the human rights law and so on, and I don't think Labour will repeal that. But I want to come back to your point of smashing the gangs.
Yeah.
If you say to people who want to leave this country that they're free to do so and here's a ticket, they don't need smuggling gangs to get them out. So you've smashed the gangs that way.
Well, yes, but
bingo.
There are no legal routes, as I gather. The problem
No legal routes to leave.
Yes.
It's always legal to leave.
Yes.
We haven't had passports for exit since the Middle Ages.
I can't speak to the motivations of these people any more than you can. But for whatever reason, these people are targeted by smuggling gangs, targeted by horrible criminals, and end up in the most awful situations, not leaving in these bizarre ways. I mean, we've had so many different cases.
Yes.
I don't understand that at all, okay? But I don't think that should mean that we jeopardise, over a handful of criminals leaving in those irregular ways, that we jeopardise this new relationship with France, this new trust that we're trying to build.
But we haven't got any new trust with France, have we? We just give them squid loads of cash. Even Starmer's mocking Macron wearing those funny glasses in a comedy session. I mean, and nobody's taking the French seriously about this.
The problem with the policy on illegal migration and the problem with what Kai's been saying is that you can't smash the gangs for as long as the economic incentive for the gangs to operate exists. And all of the policy actions taken by this government have been purely performative. It's all tinkering around the edges. For as long as there is no deterrent to coming here illegally, people will come here illegally. And because of this government, there now isn't.
Well, thank you very much, my panel. I was going to ask them où est la plume de ma tante, which, as you all know, is dans le jardin avec mon oncle. And as P.G. Woodhouse once famously said, he was perfectly educated to speak to a French pencil manufacturer, but not to anybody else. Next, we're going to be talking about drunken sailors, because they're drunken no more. As Britain's cultural decline reaches the Royal Navy in the form of a booze ban, is Britain a lost cause, or can we bring her back to her former glory? And...
I see dead people.
Oh dear, this is a trigger warning if you're nervous disposition. What spooky goings-on have been haunting the patients of Norwich?
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless, and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's cultural decline continues. The drunken sailors are drunken no more as the Royal Navy enforces a new booze ban at sea. A high-security prison has lost control of drug-running drones because heritage rules won't allow security grills on Victorian windows. Meanwhile, the Bank of England is accused of going woke over who prints our banknotes, and a London bus driver hailed as a hero by the public is sacked for confronting a thief. Can Britain be saved? Well, first of all, I'm joined from God's Own County of Somerset by the former Royal Marine Commando, Philip Ealsham. Thank you very much for joining me. I thought it was necessary to drink on board ship so you didn't get scurvy, or am I a little bit out of date?
It's all a bit different, isn't it? It's a strange topic to have. Whose government targets are we hitting here? Are the halls of Parliament, are they going to restrict alcohol to meet these healthier targets, or are we just picking on sailors?
That's a very good point. Also, it seemed to me, I read that in the army, people are allowed 2 cans a day, and that's more than the NHS recommendation. But the people who are in the army are of a physique and a fitness where they can probably drink more than your average civilian.
I couldn't really tell you. I was in the Royal Marines, so we're obviously physically fit and can deal with it. But we're growing adults at the end of the day. If you're going to tell adults that what they can and can't do, are we going to affect morale? Are we going to affect recruitment? Where does it stop?
Well, that seems such a good point, that surely people on board ship or in the Royal Navy should be able to decide for themselves whether they want to meet government guidelines, unless we're going to become a prohibitionist country and say you are only allowed X number of drinks a week for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's different areas to look at this. If we're in operational standing, if we're in war fighting stance, then obviously alcohol should be banned because we're meant to be ready to go. But there's different moments within that. If someone's getting drunk every night, there's a bigger problem, and we're hitting the symptom rather than the root of the cause. And maybe we should be looking at why people are drinking every night of the week rather than trying to ban them from drinking.
And there must be quite a lot of time on board ship when nothing much is happening, and therefore for people to have a drink is not any risk to the security and safety of the ship.
There's always something to do, and obviously as a Royal Marine, I don't know the full workings of the ship, and there's obviously crew on board, but there is always something to do, and trying to keep up morale when you're stuck at sea for weeks at end is quite difficult. So the odd drink here and there doesn't really harm, especially when you're keeping up your fitness and keeping up those sort of high levels.
Well, thank you very much for joining me this evening in God's Own County, which I'm heading to shortly, I'm glad to say. Thank you. Kai, this is just boring, isn't it? All of it. It's banning drinks in the Royal Navy. It's the ridiculous thing about Strangeways. They can't put grills on the windows because the prison is listed and Manchester Council hasn't got round to giving them planning permission.
Yes.
And there's just sort of crazy way of running a country. Then you get on to the Bank of England, it's going to put up the cost of printing banknotes because it wants the companies to fill out ESG forms. What are we thinking about?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And all of these fail the common sense test. In particular, the example you gave of prison, one example of a prison, but I'm sure there's others, where drone attacks, drones flying drugs and other contraband into prison, we can't solve that problem, the increasing drone crisis, because of a heritage rule. And not only that, this is only going to get worse because now there are drones that have the capacity to take whole human beings into the air. So, it's this big problem that we ignore for fear of abandoning some small rules that we've accrued over many, many years, and it's symptomatic of the current bloat of the British state. I don't see anybody looking to tackle that.
And it's taking power away from politicians to make decisions and giving it all to advisors. Say some loony advisor in the NHS doesn't want people to drink, say that's now enforced on the Royal Navy. The Secretary of State will, of course, listed Strangeways Prison, but he can't then unlist it. Yeah. And now the Lord Chancellor can't make the prison secure. It's all taken away from politicians and given to people who are just box tickers.
Yes, I think that is at the root of so many of the things that we are frustrated by in this country. And going to the topic of can this be fixed? Yes, it absolutely can, but it's by applying those common sense principles. And the way we do that is precisely by trusting the people. And the people's representatives are elected politicians. And that's where the power needs to go, for the simple, healthy reason that, as we know, they answer to the ballot box.
And we can be chucked out if we don't do it properly. And this poor bus driver, the bus driver was absolutely amazing, man. A lady was robbed on his bus, stopped the bus, jumped out, ran after the robber, caught the robber, got the jewellery back for the woman. Then the man was still loitering around the bus. So he went back out, got him, held him for half an hour till the police came. The police said he used reasonable force, he behaved properly, completely cleared, and the bus companies fired him. It's just dreadful, isn't it? You do the right thing as a citizen, and some wet, woke bus company gives you the push.
I think that case in particular speaks to me about also this feeling of caution that so many people have. People are scared to do the wrong thing or offend somebody or get called out by somebody on Twitter or whatever. And that's become quite pernicious. I think that happens across our public life. And we are all to blame for buying into that a little bit. I think, and we do it with public figures all the time, I think people should be allowed much more leniency to go ahead with their lives, do things that make sense to them, and act certainly in heroic ways without having to fear that some other...
Yeah, the bus company should have promoted him, shouldn't they? And the Kai's absolutely right. I never thought I'd say this in this programme. That we just need to toughen up a bit and be realistic about how life is led, and that not everything will be done as if it's a vicar's tea party.
That's exactly right. No bureaucracy can save you from the toughness, the slings and arrows of life. That is just one of those things that all of us have to deal with, and you can't be protected from that by a rule, by a set of guidelines. You simply have to understand that sometimes life can be tough and you need to, therefore, be able to deal with it. And that's what that failure to accept that common sense principle is what unites all of the incidents we've been talking about tonight.
Absolutely. Well, there is one thing that bureaucracy definitely cannot protect us from, and I'm afraid to say this is ghosts, because there are shadowy movements, cold shivers, and the figure of a small child in a red dress roaming the corridors at a hospice in Norwich. Fear spread quietly until the NHS called in exorcists, complete with holy order and holy oil and a blessing ceremony, a place of healing overtaken by dread, ancient rituals summoned when science had no answer. This wasn't a horror film, it was an NHS building. Was it haunted? Were there ghostly apparitions? Were there spooks around? Or is the socialist-run NHS simply a ghost of its former self? Well, it seems to me that we should all worry about ghosts, but it fascinates me that the rituals that they come up with to get rid of them always seem to be in the old rite of the Catholic Church, which is one in the eye for the modernists. Ghosts don't seem to take any English, and they're terrified of Latin. They don't like holy water and they don't like holy oil, but you go along to them with sort of woke new nonsense and they keep on doing their ghostly stuff. Anyway, that's all from me. Up next, it's the one and only Alex Armstrong in for Patrick Christie's. Alex, what's on your programme this evening?
Thank you very much, Jacob. I had to get some holy water out in the studio tonight because it's going to be a big show. It really, really is. First of all, we're talking about smashing the boat engines, Labour's latest idea to stop illegal migrants. What do you make of that one? I think it's all completely stupid. And how many millions of pounds do you think we're spending on migrants that can't speak English? It's pretty astonishing, the number. I'm going to be telling you all of that up on the show in just a tick.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. More unsettled weather to come, lots of rain around during the next 24 hours, snow for some northern areas, all of it accompanied by gusty winds. Low pressure well and truly in charge of the UK's weather at the moment. A south-shifted storm track means these lows are moving in from the southwest, relentlessly bringing more bands of rain in to much of south and southwestern UK. And those bands of rain moving northeastwards, bumping into colder air in the northeast. So could be issues at first overnight across Northern Ireland, the southwest, following yet more wet weather. But then, by the end of the night, there'll be some snow falling across parts of northern England, southern Scotland, most likely above 100, 200 metres, and not really settling until you get to 300 metres. But there'll be some wintry weather around first thing. The Grampians continuing to see persistent rain and hill snow, likewise accompanied by strong southeasterly winds. Northwest Scotland, once again the place to be, plenty of sunshine to start things off here. The more persistent rain clearing Northern Ireland, clearing the Midlands, and showers following. Brighter skies at first for the southwest, albeit with some showers, before the next system piles in by the afternoon, bringing once again persistent and at times heavy rain as well as gusty winds. None of these systems amounting to as much rain as we saw earlier in the week due to Storm Chandra, but not welcome anyway because of the saturated nature of the ground. And the rain in the northeast tending to persist, although the snow mostly confined to the tops of the Pennines and southern uplands by the afternoon. Saturday isn't looking quite as wet and windy. We do still have lots of showers rotating around a decaying area of low pressure in the south. They ease later in the day. Plenty of cloud cover. The driest weather towards the northwest and even some sunshine coming through. Feeling cold nevertheless. Sunday still a lot of cloud around before it turns unsettled again later Monday.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can become our biggest cash prize winner to date, as there's a simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Go on that dream holiday, buy that brand new car, or just relax in the knowledge that the rest of the year could be on us. But you have to hurry, as lines close on Friday the 30th of January. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about